so much shit you couldn't fantasize it. Trying to speak on what I lost, but I could never find it. I'm sorry if I get that love that I can't.
Welcome back to Opinionated the Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Hicks, and alongside me, as always, is my brother from another mother, Reed Washington. And today, we have two special guests with us, Mike and Destiny. How are you guys doing?
We're good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
No problem. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike and Destiny. I mean, you guys can go one by one and just tell a little bit about yourselves.
Well, Mike and I have been together for 9 years, married for almost 5. Mike is a restaurant manager, so am I. We met at a restaurant and then went on to another restaurant and ran that place together. We have one daughter. She's almost 2, and 2 dogs. What else? What else is there about us?
Gosh, I don't know. I was born and raised in Kansas City. Destiny's from a small town in Kansas that you've probably never heard of.
Pretty Prairie.
That's the name?
Yeah, shout out to Pretty Prairie.
No, but that's fine. Like, you two, just tell us a little bit how you got into, like, the restaurant business.
I moved to Kansas City from Pretty Prairie and needed a job and just started at this place called Coach's. It's just a bar and grill. I didn't have anything else to do, so I was like, I can be a server. Why not? So I did it and stayed there for almost 12 years. And then I think Mike's been in it since he was young, but luckily I stayed at Coach's for as long as I did because that's where I met Mike.
And it was just love at first sight? How did that happen?
I was
Not.
I wouldn't say love at first sight. I think I scared him.
It was something like that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we stayed friends for a few months. We had another friend of ours that passed in the last couple of years.
But she's the one that united,
and we
brought
just,
us together.
All three, we hung out. I had an apartment with a pool, and I worked 2 or 3 days a week, so we just hung out at the pool all summer long. One summer, and it just all kind of ended up happening.
We weren't each other's type.
Oh, okay.
Right.
So we were just friends.
So you built the friendship, but do you
I
guys?
didn't think he was cute.
Do you guys think that's the key thing to your marriage is you guys became friends first?
I mean,
so. I think it was a huge part of it.
I think that we focused more on building a friendship, and then one day she was walking by me and I slapped her ass, and
said,
and it was all over.
He's
from
like,
then,
in her mind,
It was free game after that, right?
Oh, he's interested.
So a couple of months of dating, and before we made anything, exclusive and official.
Yeah.
What are some important factors to marriage just in general? Yes, relationships do get hard at times, and yes, they can get on the rocks. And what are some just advice you have for those who are looking to get married or who are married? On some advice on how to keep it lit, the flame lit.
You got to be willing to fix. That's really for me. I mean, you're gonna fight, you're gonna disagree, you're gonna, you're gonna butt heads on things. It just, and that's okay. We're two just human beings that are different,
right?
Rolling with the punches and just adjusting with each other.
And move on. Don't hang stuff over each other's heads
Yeah.
and be that that person. Too many people just quit and leave and go. How can you tell somebody you love them and be like, oh, I'm just I'm done with you.
No,
You're not just done one day. You quit. You quit them, and that's to me. I mean, for us, it's starting as friends and being friends through. I mean, we have a lot of the same interests, and we're able to do a lot of things together. We both do a lot of things separately, and we have our own hobbies and interests and things that make us happy and that we go through week to week and day to day. So
yeah, I think that's important for us. I don't think that's important for every marriage. Some people are want to be together all the time. We're both pretty independent people, so we need to have our own separate lives, and then we get to miss each other, and then we get to come back to each other and be so excited to see each other and tell each other about our days and all that good stuff. So that's what works for us, but I mean, obviously there's not one method that works for marriage, but in ours, that's what's kept it going.
I think just from my understanding and my experiences, I think it's just each individual respecting each other. You know what I mean? And you guys come together because you guys think, you guys believe that, it'll work out and
Yep.
you can have a life together, but it's still, you have to respect her and she has to respect you. Just like you said, you guys love doing the same thing together, some things, and then, you know what I'm saying, like you have your other things that you like doing in her as well. So I think that's key. It's huge.
I think communication and trust, everybody says it, but everybody says it for a reason. You have to know that you trust the relationship, you trust that they love you, all kinds of trust. It really isn't super, super important.
Yeah.
And then being able to talk about anything, even if it's going to hurt their feelings, it needs to be said.
Because Ree and I, we like to talk on the topic of when the pandemic first hit, we saw a lot of relationships and marriages, fail because for the first time in a while, a lot of couples had to, just be at home together. How was that process with you guys and having a baby?
Oh, that was definitely diving in head first into the parenting, and we were working together at the time, so we had no separation. I think it was kind of fun though, because it was kind of a step back from our crazy busy life that we had. It was more mellow work, so we kind of really enjoyed the pandemic and the quarantine time because we hadn't got to do that for a while.
She enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it. I had to lay her off because I was her boss at the time.
yes.
So she got to, spend a few weeks at home. She, found a job pretty quickly after.
And I mean, how was that like having that husband-wife relationship, but also you guys were coexisting, working together, and you had to like come home and say, "Hey, I have to let you go"?
Probably the worst thing that we've ever done was her being, one of my subordinates at work. Just, not that it was hard or, anything beyond just that she's difficult to manage as an employee. And she just does things. She just does things her way. So, and that's something that I love about her in our life, and something that I just had to accept as her boss. I would say something, and she might just do something else. And, it probably wasn't wrong what she was doing. It just wasn't how you wanted it, right?
But like, you guys never brought work home, correct?
We tried really hard not to. I think it's.
She brought work home.
I brought work home. Yeah, Mike didn't bring it home. I brought it home. It's I don't know how people don't bring it home, but I admire them. I couldn't not bring it home, so it was one of the best things for a marriage for me to stop working
find
with
somewhere
him.
else.
Yeah.
But I think it's just that business aspect. You understand that it has nothing to do with the personal life. It has nothing to do with personal feelings. It's just like business-wise.
Yeah.
I definitely want to cross ways and definitely talk about your daughter. I think
because
that's
she's perfect.
I think that's just a huge story, and for your guys' case. I don't want to say case, but for your guys' circumstance, people can actually learn and benefit from actually hearing somebody who is open to talk about it as well.
Yeah.
So.
Mike?
Where to start? Yeah. So, Destiny and I, we had our first pregnancy about a year before we got married, which ended up miscarrying, and I don't know.
We just thought, oh, it happens.
So,
just didn't even think twice about it. Oh, this happens to everybody, but it's not going to be an issue, an ongoing issue. It's just kind
You're
of
thinking positive.
Yeah.
We were,
we're like,
we
we'll
were
get married,
super
whatever.
excited about it, even though we weren't married yet, and we had told family, and so then we had to backtrack and go back and tell everyone that we lost it, and,
right?
Which is it's hard stuff to talk about while it's happening.
Yeah.
Everyone always says don't tell people you're pregnant until you're 12 weeks in, just because you could lose it, and then you got to.
But that's hard to do, because it's like, if it's like your first time of it happening,
And
of
you're
course
so
you want to tell everybody.
excited.
So then you get people even a year later that are come by and they're like, "Wow, weren't you pregnant?" And then you got, just reopens an old wound. So, fast forward, we get married. We have a few pregnancies that again miscarried, and we had one ectopic that happened. That was the closest that we've gotten to a viable pregnancy. Which she ended up having to go to emergency surgery, and it was, it was
very
just
scary.
a really terrible, dark few years for us together, because I'm a super positive, it's going to be okay, we'll figure this out kind of person. And when something in the female perspective, you can probably speak better to what you experienced through that and where your head was.
Because Mike, you stated it was like dark times. Can you kind of just elaborate? One of you elaborate like on how that handled you mentally, like during this period.
It was one of the hardest times in our marriage ever. There was definitely a huge divide between us, mainly because I felt responsible, and I felt like I was the only one going through it, and I was just being I want to say selfish, but I was sad. I was grieving,
right.
And I didn't include him in any of it. I didn't look to him for help. I didn't look to him to go through this, and I didn't even once take into consideration that he lost the baby too. It wasn't just me. Like, yes, I was going through it physically, but he was going through the loss too, and in turn he was losing me because I was withdrawing from everything, from just being social, from talking to anybody about it. And it just became, I felt guilty that I couldn't carry a baby, which, it's out of my control, obviously. But I couldn't help but feel that way, and I felt like I was letting him down, and it was a very dark time for me, and it separated us. And he was alone in it, and I didn't comfort him. I didn't let him comfort me, and so we were definitely divided at that time.
And how were you two able to just, build that chemistry back up to, we're together through this, it's no one's fault, it happens, but we both love each other. How were you able to build that relationship back?
There was one turning point. Do you remember the one night of our family just kept getting pregnant? His family has.
Yeah, my brothers and sisters and brothers and sisters-in-law exploded with babies through this whole time.
There was 10 babies born in that time that I was
continuing to get pregnant, and I was afraid. They'd call me and tell me, and I'm excited for them, and then I was afraid to go home and tell Destiny. Like, it was a weight on my soul because this happy, awesome thing that's happening to my family as we grow and all that, and that I can't be happy for them because there's no way she would be happy for them at that time.
I was jealous, but I didn't know how to deal with jealousy is a weird emotion, and I didn't know how to express it in a healthy way. But there was one night where it was an explosion of emotions, and he said, I'm going through this too with you. Stop pushing me away. And it was like, whew, like everything I needed to hear. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even realize I was doing it. I was just so self-involved at that time. And that was really the huge turning point, which goes back to the whole communication part, is that we completely stopped communicating. And I just needed him to tell me how he was feeling. And then I was able to let it all out, let all that guilt out.
My fault to cut you off. I just think that's like the strength in relationships that there's always gonna be that point where things get hard, but you like look at each other and be like, I really love you. You know what I mean? I need to make this work because I want you here in my life.
Yeah,
so.
That was it. Totally took me back when he said that. We're like, he's like, it happened to me too, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have been, I love you so much, and I'm so sorry that I've been putting you through this too. That I just was being so selfish, and so it was, that's something that's good in a relationship is when you don't want to hurt them.
Right.
And go to that turning point now, happiness with your little girl. How did this come about?
The people say everything happens for a reason, and you're supposed to be in places in your life for a reason, and you don't actually like realize where you're going. And Mike and I had so many dark times and so many losses and other things in our life that happened, and we just felt like Kansas City was pushing us away, and we felt like we weren't where we were supposed to be. We tried to move to Colorado, and it failed, and we came back and with our tails tucked, and I went back to work at Ale House, and Mike got a job with the same company at Parkway, which is owned by the same people, and they just so happened to own an adoption agency. And so it's just like we were where we were supposed to be, and we didn't realize the direction we were heading in. So there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and they helped us through the whole adoption process and made it.
Because I honestly don't know. I know couples who have done the adoption agency and all that, but can you just give me a quick little summary of the step-by-step process of how that goes?
It's intense.
Even quick.
So
it's intense.
I was super nervous because I'm cheap and I see dollar signs, and I shy away from that, and I don't know how you could manage something like that. But I agreed to sit down with the agency and just for an info session so I could ask questions and, just kind of be real candid about it. And we sat down, and I think we ended up initiating the very first paperwork that day just on an impulse, like, let's just try and make it work. They talk about a, $40,000 to $60,000 budget that you want to have to get this baby adopted, and, covers legal fees, covers, you cover a lot of money that goes to rent for birth parents and things like that. So there's stuff that comes along with it that, once we started really like going down the path, it's like, okay, every day the goal is to get one thing done. And it took us about a year to get all of the paperwork, home studies. We had to get medical checks and psychology checks and just things
Background
that
checks,
have to
all that
happen.
So
And
do you think that shies people away from actually signing up or trying to go further with it?
it just takes, for sure.
Yeah.
It just takes
I
forever
think you definitely
to.
have to be dedicated because
Right.
it takes, and you have to be willing to wait.
Right.
Because even after you get all of that done, you could wait 2 more years until you get picked, and then 10 months until the baby. So it can be a long process. We were extremely lucky, and it did not take us that long, but I don't think that happens.
We were active. We finished everything, and we went active, and we were active for 4 days before we got matched. And when we got the call, they knew we were going to get the call, so they sent down videographers. So this is all
it's all
on
recorded,
camera
it's
and part of a video, and so they call us and tell us that we matched, and we're just so excited that somebody picked us to adopt their baby
That quick, though.
that quick
in
after
4
4
days,
days.
yeah.
And then they turn around and they said, okay, so here's the thing, your baby's due in 2 weeks. And we were just, what? What do you don't have
Could be in
a nurse
Colorado in
right?
2 weeks.
We don't have stuff for this kid. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl because the
Shopping
mom has
spree.
not been to
Yeah,
the
shopping
hospital
spree.
for it. So we're like, let's just, the
You
baby
ever
was
done like
in.
the mommy and daddy classes and everything
we
like that?
didn't do any of that
Oh,
stuff,
that's what I was telling people. You
It's
don't need any of that. We winged it. We made it. She's doing
fine.
good.
She's great. She's smart. And, it just really it all came together. So, and it does take just, and it's just time on time because you get there and you take custody of the baby at the hospital or whatever. You kind of work with the birth moms on what they're comfortable with. And, once you take custody, then you have to wait for the interstate compact to come through, which can take up to 14 days. And,
So you
so we
have
were
the
just
baby,
kind
but
of
it's not yours.
there in
just
Colorado,
watching.
and you can't leave the state, and so you just got to be there. So it just those it's just that money that just kind of piles up because you got to have and again we got fortunate because we're in Colorado. We had a friend there with a big house, and we were able to stay and not have to pay a daily or a weekly hotel fee, and we had a kitchen and just space to
And after like the whole process, after the 14 days, the baby comes home. Now how was that moment when you're able to walk into the house with the baby in your arms and you guys are like, okay, we're parents?
that one was fine. Let me tell you, when I was leaving the hospital, this to me was the biggest fear, and because we're tired, we've been up every 2 hours having a bottle and just checking and seeing this baby because you're mystified that this human being is here and your job is basically to keep it alive.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm leaving, and I'm, coffee on coffee. I had a day where my stomach was just upside down because I drank too much coffee, and so I'm pulling out and I'm delirious. I'm tired. First time I've ever driven a car with a baby in it.
I caught that.
I'm rolling down this hill, and I was stopping, but I just don't think my foot was on the brake. So I kind of just rolled out into the street and was like, oh, "Get it together, Dad. You gotta you gotta lock it up. You have a baby
drove
in this
40
car."
miles an hour. Ooh, down the road, I was in the backseat dude, come on.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Coming home, we drove back from Colorado Springs. So, coming home and getting there, I think we were just so relieved because we made it all the way to Topeka before Carson just wasn't having the seat anymore, and we had to pull over. We stopped for 2 hours. I mean, it's a, maybe an 8.5 hour drive that took us 14, 15, or 16 hours to complete because you're stopping, changing, feeding, eating, and I think if it were our parents, they probably would just, get in the back seat and unbuckle us and feed us all while you're driving. But I think people go to jail for that nowadays.
Yeah, coming home with her
Everybody has
was
their-
a little bit of like it seemed very surreal. Like, we're in our house and this baby is ours, and we had 2 weeks to prepare for it. And so, we didn't have a crib set up. I think we had a bassinet. I don't know. But, we got to introduce her to the dogs, and that was super cool. And it's a very surreal feeling of like, oh my gosh, this baby's mine.
Yes. And I mean, they always say, like, I won't say the first year is the toughest, but then it's like you get past the first year. How old? She's 2, correct?
She's almost 2, yeah.
Almost 2. Okay. So this is all happening within the pandemic.
She was like 4 months old when the pandemic
Okay, so
set in.
let's rewind a little bit back. How was that? Because I know now I asked you guys about the marriage, but how was that having a baby, like a newborn, during the pandemic?
I think I'm thankful that Mike is not a germaphobe and that he was raised by a nurse, because he's like super laid back about everything. Because I can.
You were freaking out.
I can be. Yeah, I can be a hypochondriac, and I can freak myself out about stuff.
Nobody was allowed over, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to let him over. Mike's like, it's fine, it's fine, it's okay. They can. He was like more laid back about it, so it made me more laid back. And I mean, I think it worked out for the best for us, because Carson's very social. We didn't see a ton of people, but
that was almost like a blessing, because you both of you were able to really just stay home and get to know her.
Yeah, we didn't get I didn't get maternity leave. I got a little bit because we were out there, but so we got to take, I think it was 6 weeks that Ale House was closed. So we got to take 6 weeks and just be home with her. And she was 4 months at the time, but it was so nice to actually get to have that, felt like a maternity leave with her, and, feel like
time that is
parents.
bond.
Yeah, it was, I haven't taken 6 weeks off work since I started working, so that was amazing.
And like Rhea and I, we don't have any kids, so we can't really relate. But can you just tell us a little bit of how having a child has changed your lives, whether it's been maturity-wise or relationship-wise or things like that?
I mean, but like besides the gray hairs.
Yeah.
I mean, we get up a lot earlier. That's for sure.
Did
we
you
go
guys
to
ever take turns getting up? Like, oh, she's crying.
She's the late night person.
Yeah.
So I would go to bed at 8 p.m. with Carson, and just try to get her to sleep all night, or 7, or whenever she would fall asleep, I would just go to bed, because at 3 a.m. that was my shift, so to speak. So I would be up at 3 a.m. and we'd sit there, and like Carson would be up, we'd eat, she'd fall back asleep eventually. We'd be sitting there watching I'd watch Sea Life or some one of those just kind of documentaries that you fall asleep to just because the colors are fun. We had a friend call them smart baby shows, but sometimes it was like Little Mermaid. We watched Little Mermaid over and over
I think
and
Mike
over
knows
and over
every
again.
song on Little Mermaid now, so that's changed.
There's going to be that
Knows
one
all the
movie
Disney
Yes.
songs.
that is going to stick with her.
One of us, she's like, it's about every week or two she switches it up on
Yeah.
us and wants something
I
fresh.
think working in the restaurant industry honestly was super amazing for us for being parents, because we were used to the weird hours. We
Yes.
were used to taking a 3-hour nap and then getting up and doing another shift, and so we didn't feel like some parents are super tired. Like we were a little bit tired, but it wasn't that big of a shock for us.
You're never not tired as a parent.
Yeah, I think it's just you just get used to it after a while. But definitely seeing Mike as a dad it's a new kind of love for him, and I think maybe it's the same for me.
I mean, I always knew she'd be
feel
a
that?
great mom. Like I always knew that we'd fight over, giving the kiddo Sprite or fruit snacks after 7 p.m. before bed,
Yeah.
or that's
He's the
popsicles, things like
disciplinarian.
that.
I am
knew
the
that
fun
that
one.
was-
Yeah.
Sneaks it through.
I give in. I can only handle so
I'm
much.
definitely the
this little-
pushover.
She cries
I'm the
and
pushover
she's
for
yelling
sure.
fruit snacks at you, and she won't calm down.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of give and all that, but I definitely am more structured
Yeah.
than she is with Carson, just on routines and things like that, which makes my life way easier when she's at work at night, because we go to bed on time. She sleeps in her crib, and she always complains about how her back hurts. Well, she sleeps on the couch all the time with the kiddo, and
I'm the fun one.
she's the fun one with a hurt back.
Yeah, I'm the fun one.
So, Destin, I have a question for you, just because it is personal, because you are a woman. Do you have any advice for any other, anybody out there listening who may be going through the same situation that you went through?
Yeah, I think you're not in it alone, and don't be afraid to talk about it is probably the best advice. I was so afraid to admit that what was going on because I was afraid people were going to have pity on me, and I didn't want people to feel bad for me. And so I just kept it all in. And I mean, I've never had anxiety. I've never felt depressed or anything, but during that time, my anxiety was through the roof. I had insomnia. I was definitely probably going through some deep depression, and I was afraid to talk about it because I didn't think people would understand, and I didn't want people to feel bad for me. I just wanted it to go away. Mm-hmm. And so the best thing that ever happened was opening up about it. Talking to oh yeah, so I've had some miscarriages, and people will be like, me too, or this is what I did, this is who I went and saw and talked about it. And it just takes that weight off of you that you're just carrying around. So I think that talking about it, and one of the things that was the worst was when we finally went to a fertility specialist, and she said, "Why'd you wait so long to come to me?" And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, I was doing what my doctor said. And so being open with your doctor about it is huge, because the doctors are just gonna let you keep on having them. They just kept on going, keep trying, and never gave me a direction to go and never gave me any advice. And finally, when I went to the fertility specialist, she laid all these medicines out for me that I could have, told me all these different things I could do in my life, how I could change my diet. And it didn't work for me, right, but it doesn't mean it won't work for somebody else. And then the one thing that was the best for me probably was I went to a different fertility specialist just because I felt like I needed to have a second opinion. And he did one test, and he said, "Girl, you got bad eggs," just straight like that, like no sugarcoating anything. And I was like, "Thank you." Like, I have been waiting for 3 years to hear this. So I think keeping the communication open with your doctor is super important, because they're not gonna tell you the things you need to know. You have to ask. You have to know what your options are.
And Mike, I mean, would you have any advice for any men, like husbands or boyfriends who are, going through the same thing, but, just uplifting, the spirits of their partner?
Oh, words not to say, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You don't you want to be positive, but you need to, just really kind of be supportive of the emotions, because it's not something that there's not a fix. It's not, I'm a fixer, and that's just, I ask a lot of questions and I try to find ways to fix things. And, I do that inside my relationship with my wife. I do that in my life in general, just and how I interact with people and how I interact with work and how I interact with home. I fix things. So it's just not one of those things that needs fixing. It needs, you really need to be resolute and, be willing to continue to try, but you need to be sensitive that you don't understand what your wife or the female side is, because it's not your body that is failing you, and it's really hard to wrap your head around that. So, trying to be the, uplifting, happy person, but, there were times when we were going through all this that, I think I can think of one or two where I got really down, and, like it started really kind of chewing me up, but she would then somehow pull herself out of the funk, and she would be the positive one. And, so it just, you just got to stay in it. And, it's not, there are a lot of ways to become a parent. There's many ways to parenthood. You just, if that's what you want, and you're a family person, or, that's how you just need to explore it, whether it's, medical, IVF, things like that, or if it's adoption, a domestic adoption versus a foreign adoption. I mean, there's just a lot of, there is options.
I think it's important too that I think a lot of people, us initially too, shied away from adoption or IVF or any of that kind of stuff because it's so expensive. But we underestimated the love and support of our tribe, of our community, and of everybody that we've ever been in contact with, because we had a fundraiser and those people showed up.
Yes.
And they supported us more than we ever thought. So it was, and even if it's not monetarily, you know, emotionally, everybody was there for us once we let them. And I think that's important for people to realize that people want to help you. Mm-hmm. It's hard to ask for help, but they want to help you.
Well, guys, I mean, we appreciate you guys coming on here and, you know, sharing your story. You know, it's quite beautiful, honestly, and much respect to you all, much happiness in the future.
Thank you.
He's Reed Washington. I go by the name of Joshua Hicks. This is another great episode of Opinionated the Podcast, Season 2, Kansas City edition. Love, always.
She say, why is it when I call that you always hit decline? Cause every time I pick up, it's the same thing every time. You ask me how I'm doing, and I tell you that I'm fine. Trying to match these demons that I sing about every night. She said, why